the Clippers, the 8th seed in the Western Conference, basically said, hell with all that. Hell with all that. We don't care about the season. What we want to do is position ourselves. We've shown enough promise with our youngsters where we've got, I mean, this kid Shemek can play now. Everybody didn't expect him to pan out the way that he is. He's got to learn to play better defensively, but offensively has tremendous promise. He's obviously young and cheap. Okay, so that's definitely going to help you. But to add him to the mix of youngsters that they have, youngsters who have already proven without a star that they can be competitive while still creating even more cap space to go after 2 max players, while having 4 additional picks. I can't say enough. I mean, the Clippers did a hell of a job here.
I just had to say a word about Jerry West, then I'm going to go on to the Sixers. Sure. Bill Belichick is the greatest coach and GM in the history of the NFL, and he deserves a special place in the pantheon of American sports.
And in my heart.
Right. Jerry West, there's a good argument that he should still, in fact, be the logo as he is. He was one of the greatest players of all time. And he is by so much the greatest executive in the history of basketball. It's insane. If people think this is just correlation, he got lucky. He showed up, and then the Lakers got good, and then they went to Memphis, and then they were in the playoffs every year, and then went to Golden State, and they became the new Lakers, and then shows up at the Clippers, and they're positioned to do this. What is Jerry West worth on the open market? Give him a piece of your team, like a nice chunk, and say, please, just come and be with us.
I agree, but I'm going to give guys like Lawrence Frank up in there some,
You give whoever you want. I get it.
He's got something to say about it. Doc Rivers got something to say about it.
If I had a team, boy, I'd sit down with Jerry West and be like, you're coming here. Just name the price. Here's a blank check. Here's a piece. What do you want? Look, so I'm not denying that he's got plans and he's set them up. The Sixers know this, I believe. They spent all that time in the process tearing it all down. Not just so you can get one pick, because that pick, could wind up hurt, could not be a generational talent. But over the course of 4 or 5 years, you could stockpile assets. The chances that you hit on one of them or 2 of them is high, and you need 1 or 2 to really make noise in the NBA. And they did. They got it eventually. Simmons and Embiid. But then they weren't satisfied with the process. They didn't see it all the way through. They got rid of the guy who really, Hinkie, the guy who was making it happen. They started spending their assets, their stockpile of assets on different things that looks like it's not going to quite get them there. So what do they do now? This is not the Knicks, Stephen A., where it's like, oh, we got to rebuild again, right? And I blame the Knicks for dealing because, yeah, you have Porzingis, and it's a bad situation, and I know it's a new regime, but hey, Dolan, there have been so many new regimes. You're responsible for the fact that Porzingis doesn't want to be there, that you find yourself in cap problems, etc. I feel differently about Elton Brand and the Sixers for this reason. There comes a time where you have to decide you're going to go for it or not. Given how much of the resources they've already spent on this team, given Embiid's health, which I believe is worse than has been reported, I believe, as you mentioned yesterday, the reason he fades in the second half of games is because he can't practice to the extent that he'd like because his health is hampering him from being the very best he can be. And yeah, he's a tremendous player, but who knows for how much longer? It feels like the clock is ticking.
Just to interject for a second, I was told there was concern about his health because of his history, not necessarily because of anything that's happening.
Well, let's put it this way. We all hear things.
Right.
Okay, so I have a reason for feeling the way I feel, and you have a reason for So given that situation, and given the fact that the East is strong, but there's no one dominant team where you're like, wow, there's no way to beat those guys. Given the fact that Butler's going to be a free agent, you got to push your chips into the middle of the table now. So what did they get for the first-round picks, which may not be very good, and second-round picks, which I don't care a lot about? What did they get? Tobias Harris has transformed himself from a guy who thought he was a better shooter than he was early in his career to a guy who's a very good shooter, particularly from 3, up around 43% this year. Even Mike Scott's a good 3-and-D guy in limited minutes, right? He hits 39-40% from 3 and can play some defense, a big guy. And by the way, Boban, when you put him with Embiid, yes, there are defensive problems there, the way you can maybe abuse them in playoff situations defensively. But you have 48 minutes now of extremely efficient offense at the 5. And you haven't really messed with your cap flexibility. So really what the Sixers gave up are first-round picks who were likely to be toward the end of the draft coming up, and second-round picks who, if you're lucky, turn out to be rotation pieces. You can sign those guys for $5-6 million on the offseason if you have a good eye for talent and a good system. I think the Sixers right now have put themselves in a position where they could legitimately get out of the Eastern Conference. Well, that's worth it for them.
Well, first of all, that is worth it for them. And in speaking to them this morning, their mentality is, first of all, don't think for 1 second that they have to make sacrifices. They believe that they will have enough for 4 max players. Over the next 18 months or so, you can expect Jimmy Butler, along with Tobias Harris, along with Joel Embiid, along with Ben Simmons, they're going to secure those 4, at least 3 of the 4. And the money is not going to be an issue for them. It's just whether or not the player is going to take it, as opposed to electing to go elsewhere. Because remember, both Tobias Harris and Jimmy Butler are free agents this summer, and to me, that's what I would say works for them, because again, like you said, those first round picks, they're not concerned about that. That's going to be in the 20s. The second round picks are given. We understand that they could sit up there and get some guys in in buyout situations, add those guys to supplement the roster. It's going to be real interesting to see how Butler and Tobias Harris work. Here's what I'm personally watching out for with the Philadelphia 76ers, because with the Clippers, I don't think they lose. You got Muscala. Muscala can play. Mm-hmm. You got Shemet can play. You got 2
No one lost here.
So nobody lost here, and we see. And again, for me, the only reason I say the Clippers is because of what they position themselves to do this summer. But in the case of the Sixers, the Clippers. But in the case of the Sixers, what I would tell you is this: I got my eyes on Brett Brown, because I like Brett Brown. You like Brett Brown. We've both spoken about him. I told you, I went on the record last year. The man lost 3 playoff games. Okay, what anybody says. I was there. I saw it with my own eye. I couldn't believe some of the decisions that were being made. He lost 3 playoff games. That's the only blemish, as far as I'm concerned, on Brett Brown's career. I supported him getting an extension or what have you. But he lost 3 playoff games. Got out-coached by Brad Stevens in that semifinals of the Eastern Conference playoffs last year. With the talent that Elton Brand, Scott O'Neal, and those boys have facilitated him getting, there is no excuse. We got to look at Brett Brown here.